It was noontime today in the center of Beijing when a man walked to the middle of the Avenue of Eternal Peace.
Well, all right. Welcome back to the Survival and Basic Badass Podcast, Kevin and Chuck. Today, well, we're going to talk about EMPs. Now, we've touched on them in the past, but I don't know. It seems more and more relevant every day, right? There's wars, rumors of wars, that kind of thing. It
Mhm.
gets you thinking. And turns out there is some new information out and things are, there are definitely some newer threats and real things that we need to, talk about and look into. But there's also different different things, out there that you need to be aware of. So
Right.
I wanted to talk about it. Like one of the things, all right, yeah, you guys remember last week we talked a little bit about World War III, kind of, as a more and more a real possibility.
Right.
Um, you hear a lot of things of Putin talking about, maybe, nuclear weapons are on the table. Like, don't push the guy in the corner. It's funny. The guy, Putin was actually, he's got an advisor, and I was listening to like a Glenn Beck program or something. We all know Glenn Beck's kind of over the top a little bit sometimes, and
Right.
like he gets into that fear thing and whatever. Like I think he believes it. I don't think he's trying to scare you, but he just kind of he chases down rabbit holes and
Mhm.
whatever. But there is some legitimacy to the stuff coming because the guy does do research, and I'll give him that. He
Mhm.
researches the hell out of everything. I enjoy Glenn Beck. I think he's fine. I'm just saying I do understand why people would have reservations or, raise their eyebrow when I say that. But
Yeah.
anyway, there's this guy, Alexander Dugin. You see him
Uh-huh.
there on the right with Putin here. He's a philosopher in Russia. And he's kind of been like a huge advisor to Putin for at least the last 5 years. I have no idea before that, but it's been relevant and in the public eye in the last
Mhm.
5 years. And he's basically like they're filling the media and stuff in Russia with like this is like end times and the antichrist is coming and Putin is actually holding back the antichrist with his efforts and trying to protect Russia. Yeah, like full on like whoa, dude, this is like kind of over the top,
Right.
not the way you expect people to be talking.
Mhm.
Anyway, Putin is saying or this guy and Putin, it's kind of been a combination and you kind of have to infer a little bit. So that's why it gets
Right.
a little gray. I'm not playing clips.
Right. And they speak
Plus,
Russian,
I
which
don't
we
speak
don't.
Russian. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing. This guy's name is Alexander. I don't know. It's Alexander spelled in Russian. I don't know what's happening. There's no
Mhm.
E's. It's very confusing for me. But the bottom line is that they're saying that America is kind of like the antichrist is coming from America or whatever, and that if they use nuclear weapons against us, I mean, hey, you're stopping the antichrist. I
Right.
mean, come
What are we supposed
on.
to do? Yeah,
You're
seriously.
the victim, right?
Mhm.
So I'm just saying, once you get that whole religious zealot thing going on, it you end up with all kinds of more danger. Anyway, Russia and in the world community using an EMP would be horrible and whatever, but it's not the same as, burning everybody into charred little whatever. If you
Right.
just take away their power and let them kill each other
Right.
and steal each other's food and die of disease, then that's like way more humane.
Right. Yeah, there's an estimate about how many people would die if there was a nationwide blackout. And they say it would take 4 to 6 years to repair all the
After
systems that were
and that's so they said
damaged by an EMP,
they
right?
said if we had one a nuke detonated off over Kansas and it created an EMP, if it was like 26,000 mile or yeah, 26 miles up and I think that one was like a 100 megaton, or I'm not even sure. But anyway, 26 miles up over Kansas, they expect it would take out the power grid and everything for 40% of the United States. And they thought it would take as long as 4 to 10 years for us to bring that grid back online. Now that's with 60% of the country having power
Right.
and being able to help. That means you still have Washington intact. You have all your FEMA support stuff,
Yeah.
and
And
still
that's
4
if
to
you
10
use
years.
one
One.
nuclear weapon. You know, the realistically you would use 3, one for the East
Right.
Coast, one for the
Right.
Midwest.
You blanket the country. That's right.
Right. And Russia has about 5,900 nuclear weapons. It's not like they don't have enough to take
Right.
care of, you know? Um
Yeah.
yeah.
So I'm just saying, Russia, it's on the table for them.
What's
That's something that they are down for, and absolutely 100% they have the capability.
let's
And
talk
they've
about
done
real
the test.
quick
Yeah, go
how
ahead.
that would work, right?
How a EMP works, or
Yeah, well, how an EMP from a nuclear blast works.
okay.
So basically, the gamma rays that are created by the detonation ionize air molecules to produce positive ions and recoil electrons called Compton electrons. This pulsar energy, which produces a powerful electromagnetic field, particularly within the vicinity of the weapon blast. So if you're not a scientist, what that means is basically the gamma rays turn the air molecules into like mini Incredible Hulks, and they just smash all your electronics.
That's pretty much it. So there's actually 3 phases of an EMP. So there's E1, E2, and E3. All right.
Hmm.
And the breakdown is E1 is less than a microsecond.
Right.
Now that's like an initial pulse, and it's huge. To be honest, that's going to take out most things because most surge protectors don't react that fast in
Right.
order to stop it. Um, but again, I mean, having a surge protector and you're like, well, my LED TV is still good, but there's no power. That
There's no
really doesn't
electricity in the
get
yeah.
you a lot. It doesn't matter. All right. The second one, E2, is like a complete saturation, and that's pretty short. And then you have E3, and this is the one that kind of typically takes out everything. And the E3, and this all happens with every like EMP. It's just,
Hmm.
well, with a high altitude nuke, right? Um, that one will actually last a couple of hours. So the big thing, if you have an EMP, don't run to your Faraday cage and open it up and be like, yeah, we're going to break this stuff out.
Right.
You got to actually wait a couple hours, let things settle down. And because that atmosphere is charged, like Kevin said. And until that slowly dissipates, you run the risk of other things still getting damaged and destroyed.
Hmm.
Um, there are ways to protect to get your equipment and your vehicles against this. Like I just mentioned, a Faraday cage. And there's something called EMP Shield that's pretty awesome. And I actually have a coupon code for you guys. I'm just saying. And if you've been around with the channel and listening to the podcast for a while, you might guess what that code is going to be. But anyway, the things like that can actually protect your stuff and your vehicles and actually even your house. We'll get into that a little bit later on what we can do to protect stuff. I really kind of wanted to, explain how real of a threat it is, because people, you don't assume, bad things. It's one of those, it's never happened before.
Right.
So, it's not realistic, but so many countries have EMPs as a major part of their defensive and, or offensive
Offensive.
weapons.
Yeah.
Sorry, words are hard. Program. So we just talked about Russia. Let's talk about China. China has HEMP simulators and defensive and offensive programs that are certainly more robust than any in the United States, China's military doctrine regards nuclear hemp attacks, that's high altitude EMP attack, as an extension of information and cyber warfare, deserving the highest priority as the most likely kind of future warfare. Now, most of the stuff I'm talking about here is from a report called the China EMP Threat, and it's put out by the EMP Task Force on National and Homeland Security. This one is from Dr. Peter Vincent Pry in June 2021. Now, there's a couple of concerning quotes, and I hate reading quotes in the podcast because I know it can get boring, but
Right.
some of this is like so shocking that you're just like, it's worth a read. All right. So, the foremost People's Liberation Army textbook on information warfare, Shen Wei Gong's the Third World War, Total Information Warfare, explicitly calls upon China to be prepared to exploit AGMP offensively and defend against it. Here's like, there was a bunch more nonsense, but as soon as its computer networks come under attack and are destroyed, a country will slip into a state of paralysis and the lives of its people will grind to a halt. Therefore, China should focus on measures and countermeasures of computer viruses, EMPs, to quickly achieve breakthroughs in those technologies in order to equip China without delay with equivalent deterrence that will enable us to stand up to the military powers in the information age and neutralize and check the deference of Western powers, including the United States. So my point is,
the United States,
they're really
why does everyone
thinking
hate
about, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of hate and anger. You know, I get irritated at people sometimes. They get irritated at whole countries. I don't even get pissed at countries usually. Like, that's not even my level of rage. So these guys have some rage. We did an episode a while back and we were talking about how much China, you know, has that propaganda kind of going all the time about, you know, how they're going to destroy us. And it doesn't help that we got like Biden running around. China's, what is it? Whatever the guy's name,
Yeah,
Xi
Jinping.
Right. He's like,
you can say Winnie the Pooh for short if you're,
all right.
Yeah. If his name is confusing,
thing gets me going with that. You saw that South Park with Mickey
I didn't
Mouse.
see that. I heard people talking about it.
Yeah, it was bad. But and Pooh and Piglet are in the prison. It's not good. Now, not only that, I would expand. Actually, it's funny. A lot of the information I got, if you guys go on EMP Shield's website, like if you're, you know, this is something you're really into and you want like hard facts and you know, stuff like that. If you go to EMP Shield's website, they have a section called library. And under the EMP library, they have all these reports on North Korea, China, anything the US government's, you know, officially published on EMPs. They're all accessible and downloadable right there. And they also have, you know, the testing and the things they've done to kind of prove and disprove. But I mean, countries have done to whether this stuff's going to work and, you know, what kind of threat it is. But basically in like 62, I think we did the atomic bomb testing, and that's when we kind of discovered the whole EMP stuff.
Right. It wasn't something that they predicted or knew about before they detonated it.
They had theories, but yeah, it's one of those you kind of till you test it, it's whatever. And yeah, no, they definitely took out more stuff, but they did have some of the cameras and stuff shielded and whatever in, you know, protected for some kind of, but yeah, it went out further than they thought. There were actually some issues in Hawaii and some other stuff.
Yeah, they did detonate one high altitude over an island in the South Pacific.
Yes.
And 800 miles away in Hawaii, they had some issues. Telephones went down, power outages in certain places, and blew a lot of fuses and things like that.
Now, mind you, yeah, this was actually Operation Fishbowl, and it was in 1962. And you're gonna like, dude, they called it The weapon was called Starfish Prime.
All
So
right.
you're classy, right? I don't know. I mean, to me that sounds like, Starfish Prime. That's I think you had Prime to anything, and you just up the level,
Right.
right?
Yeah,
That sounds
absolutely.
right. So yeah, it was actually 1,500 miles away in Hawaii. 300 street lights, telephone relay links, communication between the islands was all messed up. And this is in 62. Now, think about technology in 1962 and how much more sensitive it is than now.
Now. Right.
Because, well, like now if you don't have the static, I know when we work with circuit boards and stuff, I use the wrist strap that grounds you and that kind of thing, to protect,
Right.
electrostatic discharge, that kind of thing. It makes a difference. Um, then Russia had one called Project K, and it was Project K, and in Test 184, not that you guys care, but if you wanted to look this stuff up, they did a 300 kiloton bomb, and for 1,000 miles, it shut down, the power cables. 1,000
Mhm.
miles, that's pretty good, right?
Right.
That's significant. We had one later called, because again, we stuck with that prime thing. We had one called Triple Prime.
Mhm.
And when we did that, we realized that kind of around that, and that one was more impressive. And what we realized is a couple of kiloton is more effective than a megaton bomb.
Right.
Um, and that really actually ended up having more transmission. So that's something to think about. Now, let me think. All right, so remember now you're saying, well, how much is a power, failure going to hurt me? How much do I care? Well, remember in 2003, the Northeast blackout, right? Now that
Right.
was 10 million people.
Mhm.
And you're like, well, our power grid, it's great, right? So believe it or not, that was a tree in Ohio just, fell on a power line and 10 million people lost power. It was, for most of them, it was about 4 days. It was
Yeah, it was an extended period of time.
a
It wasn't.
significant, and you're
Yeah.
talking about like New York City and stuff. I mean,
Right.
that's a big deal. Just, it's one thing when you're at your farmhouse in the country and you
Right.
have candles and you're like, yeah, I can live without power. I'll use the grill.
Yeah.
It
Imagine that you were the type of asshole that lived in New York City, right?
Oh,
And
nobody wants to be that
power's
guy.
out. There's no water. There's no sewer that's actually functioning. You decide it's time to get out of the city. The heat's off. The air conditioner, whatever time of year it is, you decide it's time to get out of the city, and every traffic light in the entire city isn't working.
So it was summer and it was
Mhm.
hot, and I was
Right.
out fixing air conditioners and it was bad. And the reason I know this, because I was about 45, maybe 50 miles from my house, and I was in the middle of, we'll call a city. It was like Wappingers Falls, right? But I
Mhm.
had to come down for you, Kevin. It was Route 9, and holy crap, every single street light is not working.
Mhm.
And it was just I think it took like 6 hours to get
Right.
home.
Yeah.
And that's
Just
not
chaos at
anywhere
that point.
near,
Right.
a real city like New York City
Right.
or
Right.
something
I
like that
remember at that point, a lot of people were walking to New Jersey, walking across the bridges that
to get out of
because there's
that
no way
tunnel.
their car,
Yeah.
their mass transport, all that stuff was shut down, and there's no way you're getting your car out of that gridlock. It's just that city is very reliant on electricity, and it's very hard to live there if you're not ready for it, and you don't have a good way of transportation to get away from those people.
Right. Now, what are some of the things that you're gonna lose with an EMP? So first off, electric cars, it's a
Out.
no-go.
Yeah.
Gone, right?
Most
Um,
most regular cars are going to have enough check engine light issues that you're going to be lucky if you can start it. Now, some of them are going to shut down, and then you'll be able to turn them back on and be all right
that is
driving.
rumored.
Some of them, not so much.
And the year keeps changing that I hear. I've heard vehicles before 1980 you're golden. I've
Hmm.
heard as far as 86. Everybody's got a different theory on that. Again, that kind of goes back to the whole EMP Shield thing.
Right.
We'll
You
dig
can,
into that a
yeah.
little bit later and how you can protect your modern vehicle
Hmm.
and your modern house for that
Right.
matter. Water, sewer. All those pump stations. Kevin, are there circuit boards in water and sewer plants?
Yeah, you're screwed.
Okay.
You're screwed.
What about my cell phone?
Most people that are on municipal water
Yeah,
will have water for a short period of time afterwards because most of that water is pumped up into towers or, some sort of gravity feed situation.
right.
So slowly over a day or two, your water is gonna have less and less pressure until it's just dribbling out.
Yeah, that doesn't sound good.
Mhm.
So you're recommending we get the water bob.
I'm recommending that if something like that happens, you fill up every container you possibly can. A water
Okay.
bob
Fill
would
the
be great.
washing machine, the
Yeah, there you go.
bathtub,
That's a smart idea.
the
Bathtub.
buckets. And don't think of it like you're being greedy. Think of it like you're taking care of your family.
Right.
That's what I would say. Um, it's your job to take care of your family. So, Department of Energy says if we had an EMP over the United States, we should expect 50 to 80% still down after 5 years
Mhm.
of
Right.
whatever gets damaged. And that's Department of Energy. So, what do? Right? We're losing all kinds of, transformers, power grid. What happens
Computers,
is
satellites,
all your power lines,
radios. Radios are out.
all your power lines are giant antennas, and they
Mhm.
basically carry it and destroy everything, transformers, all that, right? So, what do? One, you want to well, let's talk about EMP Shield. That's something right now. So, they offer and I was so skeptical of this. I for a long time was like, I don't even know that that could work. And when you offer they're like, "Oh, well, we have this warranty on it." And I'm like, "Yeah, but what good does a warranty do for me?" And I'm just saying this because I know you're all thinking the same thing, right? I mean,
Right.
this is logical. You're like, "Well, how does a warranty help me when the world just ended?"
Mhm.
Well, in 5 years, when the power comes back on, I'm going to call, "Hey, I'm going to need that $300 back." And
Right.
yeah, that's not really
Not really
practical.
helpful.
Um, it does actually protect against like lightning strikes and things like that. So the warranty actually is relevant and stuff just working. But I was skeptical and I was like, well, with an EMP, that's something that, maybe would be an issue. So anyway, they actually offer whole house and whole vehicle protection. Now it's not cheap. I think it ends up being about 389 for like the house or 389 for the vehicle.
Mhm.
Um, to be honest, if I was on the regular power grid, I don't know that I would worry about my house that much because when the grid goes down,
Yeah, it doesn't have any.
I don't really need my TV to work. You know what I'm
Right.
saying?
Yeah, if there's
Um,
no power coming to your house, then all
right.
your stuff in your
Now,
house working isn't really like.
Now, if I'm willing, because I have money and I don't, whatever, if I have a lot of nice stuff in my house, I have a $2,000 TV or whatever, and I was worried about a lightning strike or the power lines ripping off. Have you ever seen when the neutral wire rips off a house? Dude, it fries everything. Your
Mhm.
washer, your dryer, anything with a circuit board, just done. And, homeowners insurance kind of handles that, but it still sucks. And nobody
Right.
needs any of that. I
Right.
will say,
And there's never a situation where your shit gets damaged and it's insured and you come out on top.
right, right.
It
Yeah.
always ends up
And
costing
when
you
have
a
you been
fortune.
in like a car accident and you're like, whoo, I
Yeah.
won? Yeah, that never
Right.
happens, right? Um, so anyway, this would actually protect against that. And for 380, I gotta say, if I have nice stuff, that's probably a good investment for even my regular house. But the bottom
Mhm.
line, for your vehicle, they actually did extensive testing. Now, I was like, well, what does that mean? That it's going to meet government standards.
Right.
Well, one, government standards require that you protect against 50,000
Mhm.
volts.
Right.
These actually were tested at up to 90,000 is what I read. But it said they were tested at 90,000. And I know they say they're designed for over 100,000. But the testing, that's where they went. I don't know. But either way, that's well beyond what government standards are for military vehicles.
Mhm.
So it's going to help you out. And the thing is, nobody's really talking about more than 100,000 volt, EMP.
Mhm.
But that's something you want to look into. But the bottom line is, it is been tested, and they set up these awesome freaking. They use a capacitor, and I got a picture if you're watching it on the video. But they run these transmission lines,
Mhm.
and they basically create the surge, and they hold it there, and it saturates the vehicle, the equipment, they put electronics in there and see if it's actually going to protect it. And this has been done. Like I watched the videos, and I'm like, all right, like they actually checked it
It
out,
actually
and it's
works.
really going to work. That to me is worth something. And I gotta say, like, I have old vehicles, and when I bought it, or when I made the decision that I was gonna buy an old truck and whatever, EMP was something very relevant in my mind.
Right.
I'm like, this is something I wanna, protect my family against. So I was down for those. Look, I like we're working on them. I like whatever. There were other influencing factors, but it was a consideration.
Mhm.
Now, my point is, um, for 350 bucks to make your nice modern vehicle not become a freaking paperweight,
Mhm.
that's pretty awesome, actually. I
Right.
think they're 389 is the answer. But
Mhm.
if you use code badass, that's the code badass, it's going to save you 50 bucks.
Mhm.
And so that brings you down to like 349 or something in that neighborhood, 339. I don't know. It's going to save you
Right.
50 bucks, whatever it is. And bottom line, you're gonna be kicking ass because 'cause you're gonna have your nice, cool vehicle, your radio is gonna work. There might not be
Mhm.
anybody transmitting out there,
Yeah, if you have
but
EMP Shield and an EMP hits,
tell you what, your
men are gonna
single
wanna
player.
be you, and
Yep,
women are gonna wanna
yep,
be with you.
exactly. You're gonna be loading up the bus, whatever you
Mhm.
got, EMP shield, you got it in there. They actually have a micro one that's, like, tiny, you can put on your motorcycle, your anything now.
Yeah.
They're working on it. But the bottom line is, it sounds like a pretty freaking great deal, is
Mhm.
what I'm getting at. Cause and then so here's the cool thing, if you do the micro, they actually have it with the wire cable. Cause that was the thing, I was like, "Well, which vehicle?" I'm like, "To be honest, I'd want it in my cool truck, but I end up taking the good gas mileage little car for the road trips."
Mhm.
And I know if I'm on a road trip, I don't wanna be stuck with a vehicle that dies, in the middle. And I was like, "What do I do?" Because I mean, to be honest, 389 is a lot of friggin' money. And I don't it's not a lot compared to a car, but it's still significant, right? That's gonna
Right.
affect your budget, right? Um, so I looked at that, and I was like, "Yeah, I don't really know that I could swing 2." Well, if you buy the micro one, this new one they got, it has a plug on it, and you can wire it up in both vehicles, and when you go to take the one on the road trip, you just swap it over and plug it in,
Mhm.
and you're good in the second vehicle, whereas you can leave it in your primary vehicle, and then when you do something special, you can protect the other. Now,
Right.
obviously, it's gotta be in there when the EMP hits,
Right.
but, hey, that's still one more level of protection. Now they do the same thing for your whole house. And basically the way it's going to work is anything that's plugged in is going to be protected. And that's the same thing in your vehicle. Anything that's connected to the battery is going to be protected.
Right.
And that's pretty awesome. And like I said, I'm actually an electrician. I looked into it. I dug in, and I read, and like I said, I was really reluctant for a long time. This company's been out a while, and I just was like, I don't know that I can really and on that, but it really does, make the difference and will protect your family. So I'm just saying, code badass. You guys might want to check it out. But what else can you do? So you could do a Faraday cage, right?
Right. Well, let's talk real quick about how this might go down. Because
Okay.
realistically, if you're going to launch nuclear weapons at another country, but not intend to detonate it at a high altitude, nobody's going to know that when the missile's on its way. You know what I mean? You're not going to want to launch nuclear weapons at another country and be like, nah, psych, it was just to get the power,
Yeah.
So,
right.
So if you're going to bomb somebody with a nuke, you might as well bomb them. You're already crossing the line of using weapons of mass destruction. You might as well, so realistically, you wouldn't launch a nuke from, your country to another country to set it off. What you might want to do is say float it over a country in a high altitude balloon.
What? Would you test something like that before you did it, Kevin?
Maybe you want to give it a couple of test runs, see how many times you can do it before you get caught. Are they really paying attention?
If people even respond. What would they even do? Would they let me?
Would they just let it go all the way across the entire country before they did anything about it? Maybe.
That might be something people. I don't imagine people would ever react like that, though. I'd imagine if you flew a balloon over the United States, we'd shoot it down
immediately, right?
As soon as you hit our waters, right? We'd be like, 25 miles out, motherfucker. You're going down.
Take it out. No.
No.
Well, all right. So second possibility.
There's one more. Well, yeah, this kind of, if you're going to possibilities, I might be beating you to the punch here. North Korea Russia alerted us. You're going to like this. Russia alerted us that North Korea may have gotten leaked information from Russia on how to put an EMP inside a satellite to be able to launch it from satellites.
Right.
I don't know how they got that. It just leaked out. They had it. Yeah. They had it in a computer, and the computer was leaking information.
It was just dripping out of there.
Leaked out
somehow.
So anyway, so they said right now over Japan, over the Philippines, over anywhere kind of around North Korea, there is the real possibility that there's satellites that are capable of deploying EMP weapons right now. Now, here's the thing.
Right.
They're capable of that. Now, mind you, this information was leaked from Russia. So it's possible that Russia has this information as well. And it's possible that Russia may actually have satellites over the United States right now.
Yep.
Now we're talking about no missile flying in, anything to alert you, just, there's a satellite. Did it just get wider? Did something happen? And then, fuck, that just happened. And
you're fucked. Yeah.
What was your number two?
Yeah. So well, let's talk about a little bit about that sort of stuff, because a nuke, the primary reason for using a nuke is the massive destructive power, right? And the EMP is just a side effect. You can make direct EMP weapons that don't cause an explosion, right? So you could wipe out the electrical, and an EMP has no effect on living things, right? It's not going to kill people. So if you detonate an EMP or, an EMP weapon, it's an act of war, but it's not a weapon of mass destruction. You didn't kill anybody. You just shut the power off. You know what I mean? So it doesn't classify. It's not like it prompts a nuclear response. We're not talking about Armageddon. That's just, the opening salvo of a war. So the United States has been working on electromagnetic weapons. and it's highly classified. They don't, you don't. It's not even in the military's purview. It's not under the defense. It's under the energy department. So, if you really want to control the world, the most powerful person in the country after the president is the head of the electrical, or the head of the power departments, right? So, there's a high powered microwave advanced missile project. They call it CHAMP, which doesn't really, those letters don't really match up, but I don't know what's going on. A lot of those things seem a little suspect. The arrow and all the the projects like that, they never really seem to match up. But these systems are so advanced that we don't know what they can do and what they are capable and what they're planning on. And the idea of putting an EMP in a satellite is a great idea, but there's a lot of other direct weapons that they can use to fire at things like ships.
Right. There was a lot of testing a lot of research that it's definitely a possibility that a country like Iran could have a handheld weapon that they could launch off a barge off the East Coast or whatever, and pretty much create an EMP and cause enough problems. It's definitely always a threat. And to be honest, I know you guys, like, the assumption in America is that our borders are really secure, right?
Yeah, right. Nobody's ever been able to.
So there's no
breach our
chance
borders.
that somebody would be able to bring a weapon across our border, because like
Right.
we
And
thoroughly
hypothetically,
stop everybody and check them out. Hey, you're not.
hypothetically, they talk about suitcase nukes, but there's suitcase size EMP weapons that are massive. Not, we're not talking about like, shooting it at your truck as you're driving down the road and turning it off. We're talking about massive power outages from a small unit. And suitcase, maybe it weighs 800 pounds. It's not something you're carrying around with you, but it's something you could fit in the trunk of a car.
Right. And that's the thing. Like, there's a lot of trucks with launchers in the bed and things like that. Truck designs. I mean, what I'm saying, there's a lot of designs and things that people put together that are out there that you can see. I'm not saying there's a lot of trucks driving down the road with missile launchers in the back.
Right.
That's not what I was inferring, but go.
Now, there's also a 12% chance that we're going to get a massive solar flare in the next 10 years. So right now we're entering a high activity phase of the sun. It goes in and out, like a 12-year cycle, 24-year cycle where it goes in and out, more and more likely and less likely. And we're entering, more and more likely phase of this and there's a high chance that this could just happen naturally. We're not talking about, China attacking us, but how would we know?
Right.
How would we know?
Right. But what's worse is it's going to take out half of the world. Right. So the world's good. You probably don't know this, but the world actually turns in a circle.
Right.
And it turns out whatever side is facing the sun, that guy gets screwed.
Right.
The other guy's like, oh, I didn't even notice anything.
If that happens over the United States, maybe China will come over and help us out. Maybe they'll send their military over here to help us and make sure everybody gets food. It's the communist way. And next thing the power's out and there's a Chinese military all up and down. Huh?
Is if it happens on the other side of the world, we will send aid.
We will send aid, yeah.
And it'll cost us trillions of dollars and we'll rebuild everybody and don't worry about it. But if it happens to us, they're gonna be like,
yeah, that sucks, guys. Sorry. Sorry that happened to you.
We'll send some troops over. I don't know what they're gonna do. They might clear the land, but you know what? I'll tell you what, it's gonna take us a little while to get our response together, and we'll see if you guys don't kind of just die off first.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Take care of that shit by your own.
Just kind of want to see what happens while we get our supplies ready. Because, it's kind of one of those, like, I hate to say it, in the prepper world, you always kind of think about, you know, if somebody, like if somebody can't get food or take care of their own life, giving them money or food right now isn't going to help them if they're just going to die tomorrow.
Right.
Like you bought them a day, but you didn't
Mhm.
buy, that teach a man to fish and he eats for a lifetime. You give
Mhm.
him a fish. Well, if I give you clean water and food now, but I don't sustain it and I don't give you a way to get back to creating your own food and water, then
Mhm.
you're kind of just screwed.
Right. The interesting thing is that the United States is fully capable of feeding its entire population easily, the amount of food we produce.
Right.
The problem is that the food isn't where the people are.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Distribution.
It's not
Right.
going to be at the grocery store if trucks aren't driving. It's not going to be at your farmer's market if their tractors aren't moving.
Right.
You know, if you live in New York City, if you live in Baltimore, if you live in Jackson, Florida, if you live in San Diego, that food isn't there. It's
Right.
not. It's not at your house. It's not within driving distance. It's not like you can go up the street and pick corn from Farmer John and pay him in the change that you have in your change drawer because you can't access your bank account. Um, it's not going to be so easy. If you don't have food, if you don't have something to trade for food, you're going to be up shit's creek.
Right. Um, yeah. I mean, that's the thing. That's really what it comes down to with preppers. I mean, and that's the thing. So what can you do? You can coordinate with your neighbors on how you'd respond to a disaster, right? You can talk about each other and to each other about being prepared, about, hey, do you have kind of stuff? And hey, how might you do it? Hey, who has a well? Who has, all right, we all live in the city and we're all on municipal water and nobody has an old well that's been around for a while or whatever. So
Mhm,
does everybody have a water bob? Does everybody have a way to filter water in the creek or whatever? Does anybody know how to collect water or get rainwater, somehow? I'm sure
mhm,
that's illegal in most places, but who knows? Um, Food stores. Do you and your neighbors have food stored up, right? Do you have a garden? Do you have a way to produce more? Maybe
mhm,
it's chickens, maybe it's rabbits, maybe you have something going on there. Flashlights, backup optics. A lot of us have more advanced optics on our weapons that, do you have some more? I actually have, I think, like 4 red dots that I put in a Faraday cage. They were all like cheap, like $30 each, but I
right.
found one that actually worked well. And I was like, I could buy a bunch of these and just stockpile them. And just in case I have to break something out, for later. Um, do you have ways for like off-grid cooking, hand tools? Do you have a tractor? Is your tractor maybe protected? Is it in a metal barn? I mean, that might be enough to deflect things, but there's also a good chance that it's not. I think it really matters was the barn door open? I don't know. I know that a direct strike, like if you're in Kansas and they deploy a weapon over you,
Yeah,
that tractor probably isn't going to work even in the barn.
yeah.
Now, unless you had the whole EMP shield thing going,
Mhm.
but that's just something. I I'm just putting that out there. Um, Kevin, any more thoughts on this? I know we wanted to in the future here, maybe coming up, we might talk about a Faraday cage. I know time's always
Right.
ticking. Kevin's got to get kids to work and everything else.
Yeah, there's all sorts of stuff always happening, but we can follow up with a second episode for next week, talking about how to protect yourself and how to defend what you have from a potential EMP strike.
Right. I think that would be excellent. 99% sure we're going to have the YouTube live next week, same as always. My employer does tend to change when work happens at the last minute and get crazy. So
Hmm.
anything comes up, um, check the Facebook group or the page, and I will try and put that out there. So I will try my best to be here, but I try not to, waste your morning if you guys are planning, on checking it out. And I don't want to disappoint you. So watch the Facebook group. I will post something if something comes up, but we do plan to be there this week. And questions, concerns, things you guys want to hear about, maybe more EMP ideas, we'd love to see them in the comments. But if you have show ideas, email us at preppingbadass@gmail.com. Otherwise, I would say stay safe, and we will talk to you guys next week.